So the 2024 US election is coming up. What outcomes are possible and which outcomes do you prefer?
Well, if they count the votes fairly, Donald Trump should win. If they cheat, Kamala will win. So I put it about 50-50. I put it at about 50-50. I was like, oh, Trump's definitely going to win. I'm like, oh, that's because you're talking to voters and asking who they're going to vote for. You think that matters? One of the reasons we were cancelled is for questioning the integrity of the previous election. Joe Biden couldn't fill a room. I understand why Obama was popular. I voted for him the first time he got into office. Young and stupid. Believed in what politicians said. As an older man, I think that he was a terrible president. And I certainly understand, though, the hype behind him. Arguably the most well-spoken and charismatic speech giver of any politician I've ever seen in my 36 years. I understand why millions of people gathered for his inauguration. And you're telling me Joe Biden got 5 million more votes than he did? I simply don't believe you. If that makes me a criminal, if that makes me an election denier, whatever they want to call me, or a conspiracy theorist, fine. I simply don't believe you. I've been around, and I don't believe that Joe Biden is more popular than Barack Obama and got more votes than Barack Obama. The way he mobilized the black vote, 99.9% of all black people voted for him immediately, people who would never normally vote in elections, a lot of them. Yeah. So they're going to rig it or they're not. But there's no way Joe Biden, I think they rigged the last election, in my opinion. You're going to lose.
It's a really smart argument to do Obama versus Biden votes to kind of paint the picture of it.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine him being that much more popular?
Doesn't
I
make
can't
much
remember,
sense.
and I was a sentient adult at the time when he was running against Donald Trump. And from the time he was vice president, all these years, to the time he was running against Donald Trump, I don't even recall a single thing he said. I can remember Obama's speeches off the top of my head right now. I don't recall a single word Joe Biden has ever said. And there's also something very sinister you have to understand about people who've been in power for a long time telling you what they'll fix if they have more power. Sorry, so you were the vice president for 8 fucking years. Donald Trump's president for a couple years, and you come along talking about how we need to fix America and everything's fucked. Well, sorry, who was in the fucking driving seat just before Trump? Forever. You and your mate. Right now, Kamala Harris is doing exactly the same thing to all of you, every American voter. When I become president, I'm going to do this and change this, and I'm going to fix America's infrastructure. I'm going to... Bitch, you're the vice president right now and have been for 3.5 years. Why are you making promises instead of saying, look, it's all fixed. I've done it. I'm the second most powerful person in this country. Look, it's already done. Why are you making campaign promises? What, and then we expect that when you get one seat higher, it's all going to be better? No. Fuck that. I don't believe them.
What would happen if Trump was killed?
Well, unfortunately, it's a conversation we actually have to have because someone did actually shoot him, which is terrifying. I don't know. I just know I wouldn't want to be in the United States. What I think is we now have no choice in our election. Oh, there'd be somebody in the Republican seat. Somebody, some guy. Because I think the only other guy who I like, who I would have trusted to be some sort of revolutionary president would be Vivek, and I don't think they would have given it to him. He didn't get enough votes in the primaries. I don't think he would be in the seat.
What did you like about Vivek?
I like the fact that he is willing to tell us uncomfortable truths. I think that when people are willing to say uncomfortable truths to the people they're supposed to govern, I can at least respect that. As a man, you're telling me something that I don't want to hear. Well, good. Well, you should be the politicians, the politicians who stray away from the mainstream narratives on some issues. In England, there was the Russia-Ukraine thing. Everyone's like, oh, Vladimir Putin's unprovoked war of aggression. Unprovoked, yeah. And then some politicians were brave enough to sit down and goes, no, he was absolutely provoked and this was stupid. And England or the United States would not have stood for what we've been doing to that country. And America would have invaded Mexico in a second if we were trying to put Russian weapons there. So the uncomfortable truths, I guess, help me gravitate towards a politician much more. When Vivek said, he was interviewed and said, yeah, there's a Christian nation founded on Judeo-Christian principles, blah, 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 but you're a Hindu. He went, yes, I am. Yes, I am. but here are the principles of that the country was founded on, and I agree with every single one of them. And my Hindu faith is never going to interject with policy making, but I am actually a Hindu. He didn't lie, like probably Obama, who was an atheist throughout all of his college years and found God before he ran for politics, even though he was secretly having gay sex with a bunch of dudes. That was exposed by Tucker Carlson. This isn't an exclusive to your show, so by all means, don't attack him for it. However, do I believe that Obama was a Christian man? No, I don't. I still don't. So I like that Vivek was happy to stand up and tell us uncomfortable truths and say things that a lot of people in the United States didn't want to hear. The Bible Belt, when he's standing up saying, I am a Hindu, sure, that puts a lot of people off. But he stands by what he says and who he is and what he means. So I liked him. So if Trump had been assassinated, we'd be in some position where we'd have some shill for the Republicans, some shill for the Democrats, all funded by the same people. And I think the world would just go into this bullshit election, and they use the media to misdirect people into thinking the election's important again. What I don't think is a lot of the tough talkers who say, yeah, it would be civil war. I don't think there would be civil war. I think that people would tweet a lot, they'd post a lot, they'd act outraged, but no one would actually lock and load. And what it takes for, and I'm not giving advice on insurrections, by the way, but what it takes for a populace to successfully overthrow a government, in 99.9% of cases, if you understand history, right here in Romania, 1989, what it takes is for the military and the people in charge of the military to officially change sides. Once that happens, you have your control. So when the military in 1989 in Romania officially changed sides to the side of the people and disavowed Nicolae Ceausescu, the communist dictator, the overthrow was complete. I don't think that unless there were any military leaders in the United States brave enough to sit there secretly thinking, because they're in charge of the military, if they rig the election, I'm going to order the military to stand down and to go and seize the White House and let Donald Trump in. Unless the military are happy to help, no civil war is ever going to be won. So I think America would just be fucked. I think it would be as fucked with whatever outcome as what we're looking at now, where it's 50% fucked if we have the wrong outcome. So just all hope would have been taken away from very many people, and America would have spiraled further and further into this shithole where people can't afford groceries. Isn't it scary that you've had some success online? I'm very proud of you, but if you are a man your age and you have just finished a college education and you go to get a normal job in what we know is the marketplace of the workplace, the labor market, that you have basically a 0% chance of ever owning a house outright during your lifetime.
There's no middle class anymore.
Ever. Anymore. It's gone. And Trump will bring it back. So, yeah, America will be fucked if they kill him, and it will be fucked if Kamala wins. It will be fucked in any single scenario where he doesn't end up the president of the United States again.
What would it take to save American politics?
A lot more than Trump can do. Trump would have to essentially train and groom someone with the same moral backbone as him to be the next president. It would take 16 years of good leadership to completely save America. And Eric and Donald Trump Jr. are relatively strong, I guess, candidates for this. If they got
You're good friends with them. Do they plan on running?
I'm not good friends. I'm not good friends. And I always distance myself from anybody because they get a lot of smoke for knowing me. I know them a bit. I talk to them. I wouldn't say good friends. But I don't know of any plans of anyone running for president. That's not the kind of information that they'd share with me. But I think it would take Donald Trump giving Don Jr. a high-level administration job, let him learn the culture of D.C., let him learn the culture of American politics, and to line him up to be the next president, because to completely save America, I would think that we'd have to go back to some of the policies that John F. K. was trying to enact when a lone crazy person shot him. Changing the way that the Federal Reserve Bank works, for example, changing the way that the American monetary system works, changing the way that the military-industrial complex works, changing the way that politicians can be lobbied and paid for through various super PACs before they get in, so they have special interests. The word special interest, it shouldn't exist. Their interest should be you and your life and how good is your life going as the man who voted for them. Special interests? To who? Some pharmaceutical company that you have no stake in? Good. So they'll fill you full of poisonous injections to appease their friends. There should be no special interests. And that would be a fight that would be multi-generational in terms of presidencies. That would take 12 to 16 years. So I hope Trump wins. I hope he does a good enough job to keep the voters voting for him, half the price of gas, lower the price of groceries, so that he can then let his apprentice, whoever that may be, from within the political establishment or from outside, take his endorsement and run with the baton. That's what it would take. It won't take Donald Trump. He simply doesn't have enough time.
What are your 3 favorite and least favorite countries?
I mean, that's a very difficult question to travel to politically, ideologically.
I guess overall. Yeah.
Overall, yeah, that's still very hard. I'm a big fan of what England used to be. England is the greatest country that has ever existed. It's now failed. It's fucked up. It's like in the last year of Muhammad Ali's life, when you saw him shaking and he couldn't put a sentence together. That's what England is now. However, Muhammad Ali is still known as the greatest boxer, the greatest heavyweight boxer there's ever been. I feel like that's how I look at England, but I will always have a special place in my heart for England. It's a tiny little island in a cold, rainy part of the ocean just north of the European continent that conquered and civilized the entire world. And I've had this discussion with somebody who was Russian. And I've had this discussion with somebody who was Chinese, and I've had this discussion with people who are Brazilian, and they're arguing with me, being, oh, well, actually, not quite. And I always say the same thing. I say, well, what language are we having this argument in? Why do you know our language? How come the world's greatest superpower, you all think you're Americans, you don't have your own language. You speak that language of that tiny little island of psychopaths who got on these little wooden boats and went and conquered everybody. It's the greatest nation that there's ever been. And I will always love England for that, even though now I think it's beyond the point of no return. So I like England. I like Ireland a lot. I'm quarter Irish. The fighting spirit of these people is incomparable with a lot of places in the world. Even if you look at the civil unrest that's happening right now, Irish people are standing up against things like unchecked mass migration in a way that no other European state has done. But I like lots of countries. I like
3 least favorite?
3 least favorite. I don't hate anybody from any country. I don't have any hate in my heart. I will never say, so you're an American, yes? America have committed atrocious war crimes in my lifetime. They killed 1 million people in Iraq because some Saudi people allegedly hijacked some planes and threw them into the World Trade Center. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with that. He said he had weapons of mass destruction. He didn't. It was all built on lies, and they murdered 1 million people, wiped off the face of the planet. These people will never have families, will never know their names. America has committed atrocious war crimes, but I'm an American and you're an American, and I would never say I hate you because of what your country has done. So I'm saying that in preface because I am going to say that I don't like the country of Israel because of their politics. Again, I have friends from Israel. I have men who work for me from Israel. I have Israeli acquaintances. I've had an Israeli ex-girlfriend before in the past. I want ex-girlfriend. We hooked up a bit. So I don't have any personal disdain from anybody from these countries. But the actions of their leaders and the actions of their countries, I can't stand the state of Israel. And if we're going to take actions of their countries and actions of their leaders, I'll put England in the country I hates list because I think they've thrown away the greatest thing that's ever been here on earth, which was the British Empire. So I can hate England in the same way I hate the Israeli government. But I have no personal disdain for anyone. Another country I really dislike, let me see who I can upset. I really dislike...
I'm sure Canada's in there.
No, because again, I just hate Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
And I could say like, well, Romania is trying to put rich foreigners in jail instead of concentrating on all of its problems. But the Romanian people hate their own government. They don't need me to say that. Yeah, so I don't hold any personal disdain for anyone. There's just certain governments I really dislike. The British government, even though England's my favorite country, the Israeli government I super dislike. And I think I'd leave it at that. I have no real beef with anyone else.
Who is the greatest emperor? Alexander the Great, Napoleon, or Genghis Khan?
Well, they were all revolutionaries in their own way. which is very important to understand. So they're impossible to measure one against each other. I would have to say Napoleon, though, for the reason that he holds an accolade that Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great don't. So Alexander the Great existed in a time which lasted most of human civilization, most of human warfare, the age of sword and spear warfare. And he was very good with what he called the phalanx. And he came from Macedonia and conquered all the way over to India, all the way to the Himalaya mountains. He couldn't get any further. He famously cried when there was no more lands left to conquer. And like Genghis Khan, although Genghis Khan held on to his empire for much longer, it eventually crumbled after his death. Alexander the Great's empire crumbled immediately after his death. It was split into 4 by his most important generals. And Napoleon's empire again crumbled, but Napoleon is still the greatest because although Alexander the Great was very good at sword and shield warfare, Genghis Khan still existed in this era. His method of warfare was insanely competitive because every single Mongol man was a built-in, ready-to-fight soldier from the get-go. You didn't have to raise an army or train anyone. They were all exceptionally good horsemen. They were all exceptionally good archers. So you could just find men. And that was your army. And you could come and go and live off the steppe, and you had 2 female horses, drink the milk from there. You didn't need food. His logistics problem was solved, and he conquered massive swathes of it. He didn't actually conquer any of Europe. Genghis Khan's sons conquered Europe. The only European kingdom Genghis Khan was ever knew existed during his lifetime was the kingdom of Georgia. So when you hear about the Mongols getting to the gates of Vienna, that was Temujin and Kublai and the people who came after him. But I'm digressing because I get nerdy sometimes. Napoleon was the greatest because there was a very specific period of human warfare where technology was advancing very rapidly. It ended arguably in the Franco-Prussian War just before World War I, but it lasted in a period that predates Napoleon himself. And we're talking about musketry, the marching in formation, firing in unison, there's muskets and cannons and cavalry. And the reason Napoleon is the greatest is because this age of warfare is not called musketry warfare. It's not called march in formation and fire cannons warfare. It's called Napoleonic warfare. He owns the name for a period of human warfare. No one else does. All the great Caesars, all the great Christian knights who kicked the Moors out of Spain, Charlemagne, every single person was a character who played a certain role in an era of warfare. And it did change over the years, but only one man has the whole era of warfare named after him, because that's how fucking good he was. So Napoleon.
Napoleon Bonaparte once said, to understand a man, you have to know what was happening in the world when he was 20. What was going on in the world when you were 18 to 22, and how did it influence your worldview?
When I was 18 to 22, I did have a finger on global politics. Again, the internet didn't exist. Things like Twitter, X didn't exist or were very brand new when I was in my early 20s. And certainly the propaganda machine had a complete stranglehold on the information that we were taught, but it did make me start to question things. My age, 18, 19, 20, 21, it was the Middle Easterners are bad, Muslims are bad, they're all terrorists, and we're all good, you know. That was what we were taught as British and English and American people for a very long time. And my father had a lot of conversations with me about this, you know, literally explaining to me how the various people had tried to invade and conquer Afghanistan before, and everyone wants their oil and everyone wants their money, and the Afghan man just wants to be left the fuck alone and live his life. And I was like, aren't they all terrorists? My dad was like, how is a man who lives in the middle of the desert, who makes less than $5 a day, going to hurt you in England or America? He's not your enemy. This guy just wants to be left in peace. We're in his country, blowing his shit up. In fact, the only person ever to conquer Afghanistan successfully was Genghis Khan.
Oh,
but that was in a different era, of course. So my father explaining this made me watch the news when I was taught all of this garbage that the news was trying to push down our throats. And that may have been my first enlightening break out the matrix moment, you know? Because what I can't understand and why I like to have a knowledge of history is this. Every single war America has been involved in since World War II, The American public were spoon-fed and told it was a great thing to do and the right thing to do. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Afghan War in my lifetime when you were just a baby. And then it was the Iraq War just after that. And every single time, give it 10 years. Everybody, you, everyone in this room knows that was fucking horseshit. No, we shouldn't have sent a bunch of men to die in Vietnam. It didn't. We lost anyway. One, America talked tough about its military. It doesn't have a very good record on winning anything. Oh, they went to war in Afghanistan for 20 years. Oh, here's some big explosions. Cool, the Taliban are still in charge. They're actually more in charge than they ever were because Biden left them a bunch of weapons. So they don't have a very good record of winning anything. And they also don't have a very good record of, after the fact, anyone looking back and saying, yeah, that was a smart thing to do. And now when you have lunatics like Nikki Haley being like, yeah, we need to send Americans to go fight in Ukraine. And some Americans are like, yeah, waving their Ukraine flag, Slav Ukraine. I live on the border of Ukraine. I used to run a business in Ukraine. I know Ukrainian politics better than all of these Americans. And no, young American men don't need to go die in Ukraine. I'm like, when you look at the track record of every war we've been involved in and how fucked up we now know it was, how can anyone support any American politician saying we need to go to war with anybody? In fact, there's only one notable politician who's saying I need to stop all the wars, and that's Donald Trump, the one who was just shot at. Isn't that scary?